What's going on, everyone? My name is Jason Vincent, and I am a wedding and documentary photographer based out of Northwest Arkansas. And today we are going to be talking about part one of a three-part series where I walk through a set of images and explain everything that went into making them. The three parts are going to be bride prep, portraits, and then the last is going to be taking you through a creative after dark image. So let's jump into it. So to start things off, when it comes to bride prep, my main goal is to let moments unfold as they naturally would. I never want my clients to look back on an image and remember me telling them what to do in order to get that photo. That said, I will move things around if needed. If it helps things line up or to have a bride's chair moved over a couple of inches, I'll wait for a break in what's going on and then I'll simply ask them to move it. I also love to work with the natural light of the room as well as play around with off-camera lighting. And for getting ready images, my go-to light is the Stella Pro Reflex S. I love it because it's small, compact, you don't need a ton of room for what's normally a crowded and cluttered space. I also love that it can be a constant light, or I can use it in digital bursts to act more like a traditional flash. But I almost always use this light in constant mode. I really enjoy the see what you get aspect of constant light. And then especially for situations like this where, there's a videographer that's working around us, the constant light makes it so that we can both work off of the same light instead of us both needing a different setup, which just clutters the room a little bit more. It's multiple lights I have to work off, overpowering their lights. They have to work on, working around my light. So it just makes the whole entire process a lot easier if we can both work off the same light. As for other gear, I'm shooting on the Sony A9 with either the 24mm f1.4 G Master lens or the Sony 35 f1.4 CZ lens, as well as the Sony 85mm f1.8 lens. And then I have my light attached to a C8 auto stand from Cheetah Stand. The stand is perfect for this situation because I can quickly place it into an area even if it's cluttered without having to move all of this stuff around because it just kind of opens up wherever I set it down. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the session. Okay, so walking into this space, the first thing that I noticed was a large window and a nice blank wall. So I knew that my general background was gonna be this blank wall. I also noticed some hooks on the wall, so I moved the dress from the dressing area over to the wall. This helps make things not so minimalistic where it's just the bride against a blank wall, while also giving some context. You see her getting ready as well as the hanging dress, and so you instantly know, this is probably bride prep, right? Once I'm ready to start taking images, I try to ease my way into things. The goal isn't to start getting amazing images right out of the gate. The goal is to start getting a feel for what's going on and to see what's going to work and what isn't going to work. And it's during this time that the really good images will start to present themselves. So I start by getting my light set where it might need to be, and I get a natural light image as well as a lit image with my off-camera lighting, just so I can get a really good idea of what the scene looks like with natural light as well as what it can look like with off-camera light. From here, one image I always try to get is the backlit hairspray image. It's super easy to do and couples always love it. So I just ask the person doing hair and makeup if they can let me know when they are getting ready or getting close to spraying the bride's hair with hairspray. This allows me to have time to set up without having to completely stage the image. It also lets me work on other ideas instead of just waiting for her to grab that bottle of hairspray. But once it's time, I simply set my light up behind the bride and point it towards the camera. For this setup, I'm using the Reflex S paired with a wide optic. This gives me a nice focus beam of light so that the light isn't bouncing all over the room, but it's wide enough to light up the spray coming out of the can. For composition, I try to include the can for context just so you don't see just like a spray just out of nowhere, like you see it coming out of the can. And I try to not include the makeup artist or the person doing the hair unless I know that it's like a family friend or a relative or just like a close friend of the bride. Someone that I know the bride is going to want to remember being there. Another thing I do is always keep an eye out for situations where I can maximize my setup time. So where the light is set up for the hairspray image, if I simply turn the light to face towards the wall, this gives me a nice glowing effect around the bride. Here, I switched out the wide angle optic for the 50-degree dome optic. This gives me a little less spread, but is still wide enough to be able to frame the bride fully within the light. I also love that this optic has a nice round shape with a gradual fall off, whereas some of the other optics have a harder edge to them. As the bride prep progresses, I start to look around for more interesting compositions. For this scene, I noticed that the curtain that was part of the dressing room had a really interesting beam of light from the window on it. This reminded me of a portrait I had done a while back at a theater, and so I decided to do something a little similar. With the curtain closed almost all the way, I framed the bride in the open space while lighting her with the Reflex S. but I wanted the image to have a bit more pop to it, so I added a full CTO gel to the reflex. What this does is makes the bride's light super orange, but when you adjust that white balance to compensate for that orange, it shifts all the other natural light in the room to be a more cool blue. Another interesting composition I saw while making this curtain image was that I could see the bride through the mirror that was inside the dressing room. Hanging inside this dressing room was also a robe that said bride across the back of it. So from the right angle, I could actually get the bride, the robe that said bride, and the wedding dress all within one frame. From here, I just had to wait for the bride to turn towards the window. In addition to exploring compositions, I also look for ways that I can create interesting light within my scene. This is when I noticed the makeup artist's mirror, and I thought that reflected light off this mirror might give some interest. So I set the Stella Pro Reflex S up out of the frame and pointed it toward the direction I'd be taking photos from. From here, I just take the mirror and start reflecting that light around the scene to see what happens. What I saw was that from the right angle, I could use the reflection to light the bride while also projecting the shadow of her silhouette onto the wall. So with my camera in one hand and the mirror in the other, I can place the light right where I need to while taking images. This is a perfect example of where constant light is better than flash. Had I wanted to do this with flash, I'd have had to take a ton of test images just trying to get the mirror in the right position. And this is assuming I'd even have had the idea in the first place, since with flash, I couldn't simply wave the mirror around to see what happened. Okay, so hopefully this gives you an idea of how I tackle the getting ready part of the day, as well as gives you some inspiration for your next session. And if you like this, you will definitely want to see part 2, where I walk through some favorite parts of this bridal shoot, as well as part 3, where I walk through how I go about taking a creative after dark portrait. So hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you don't miss anything. And until then, I'd love for you to follow me over on Instagram, and make sure to hit that like button and tell us what you thought in the comments. I'll see you on the next one.